Hello, beautiful beings. Today, I want to come to you and talk about perspective and perception. Now, there was a time when my son was small and I was working 3 jobs, trying to juggle that and make sure he got to all of his services, uh, which included hippotherapy, which is horseback riding, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and he saw a nutritionist, and that was in addition to going to school and making all of his doctor appointments, appointments for durable medical equipment, which sometimes went along with the physical therapy or the occupational therapy. And so during this time, I was very busy, and my ex-husband, who I was still married to, had his job. He had 1 job, and then I was juggling 3 jobs and trying to care for my son and make sure he got all of the things he needed. So during this time, one of the jobs I worked at was I was running a short order kitchen in a general store in a small town. And the family that I worked for was interesting, the people that owned this store. So I knew the wife just from my interactions in the world, and she asked me, she knew I had experience running a kitchen, and asked if I would come and help her. And I said, yes, sure. I needed the work, and she let me bring my son on days when I couldn't find a babysitter and things like that. So we weren't terribly busy, but I ran the grill and the fryer and made sandwiches and burgers and, breakfast and whatever anybody ordered. I'd whip it up in the back and send it out. And she, when I needed help, she helped me. Otherwise, she ran the front. And her husband, who was illiterate, would be like the ambiance. He would circulate and talk to people and schmooze, and he would be the face of the store. And I'll tell you a little bit about him in a minute. But so we ran the store. Mostly the wife and I ran the store. I stayed as far away from the front as I could, even though I knew how to do it. It wasn't my thing. I didn't handle the money or anything in that position. My job was strictly in the back. I would occasionally take an order, but for the most part, my job was filling the orders. And we weren't terribly busy because it was a small town and not that many people lived in the town. So we'd get the sheriff, we'd get, people who were to and from work or that kind of thing. The kids would come in and order a burger or whatever. So it wasn't terribly busy, but it was enough that she needed somebody in the back to help. Well, at one point, we had, in the little town, an influx of construction workers. Someone was having a home built or several homes built, and there were a good number of construction workers. They would be everything from, foundation layers to bricklayers to framers to whatever was going on with the project that day. That's the construction people that were there, and they would come in. There would be, for a small town, for a large organization it wouldn't have been that much, but for a small town and a single general store, it was quite a bit of traffic. And if we had 40 people come in for lunch, that was a big lunch. So generally we had on the order of 10 or 15 people for lunch. And so when we started getting 20, 30, 40, 50 orders coming in, and we knew ahead of time sometimes that they were coming, we could prep for it, but sometimes they'd catch us off guard. Now, as I told you, the husband of this husband and wife ownership team was illiterate, but he played it off like he could read. So he would catch one of us, me or his wife, and he'd be having a conversation with a customer, and he'd look up and say, you know, if it was me, he'd say, Debbie, doesn't that say such and such? And I'd say, oh, Frank, it says whatever it says, and not think anything about it until I'd get back in the back and realize he just played it off like he couldn't see, not that he couldn't read. And so I didn't mind doing that. That helped him save face, and it wasn't a big deal. But it was a matter of perception, see, because he was the owner, so he didn't want to be seen as weak in any way. So one day we got a big influx of customers at lunchtime, and it was 3 or 4 times as many as we were expecting, and we had not prepared ahead of time. So my friend Rose, the owner, was in the back helping me, and we were fast and furious trying to get it done, trying to get everything prepped and ready and put out so everyone could get their lunch in a timely manner so they could get back to work because they had a limited amount of time. And Frank, Rose's husband, kept poking his head in the back and looking at us, and he had this really funny look on his face. And we were in the heat of battle. If you've ever worked in a kitchen, you know what I'm talking about. We were in it. We were in the heat of battle, and we were fast and furious as we could be and doing what we could to get everything done. So finally it ended, and we got through the day and finished and went out in the front and sat down to have a soda and kind of rest for a few minutes before cleaning everything up. And Frank comes along and he says, "What were you arguing about back there?" And we looked at each other, Rose and I looked at each other, and this is a fiery little Puerto Rican lady, and she is loud. And I'm not really loud, but I can be if I'm in the midst of battle. So we looked at each other and we said, we weren't arguing, we weren't mad at each other. Oh, but it sounded like you were having a big fight back there. No, we weren't. We were just, and neither of us realized we were being loud or that we had disturbed any customers. But we were not arguing. We were not fighting about anything. We weren't angry at each other for anything. We were just in the heat of battle and excited, and volume got raised. And so the reason that I'm telling you this story is also about perspective and perception. We had no idea we were being perceived as having an argument and not getting along. We had no idea. All we knew is that we were trying to do our job and feed everybody in the house so they could get back to their own business, whatever that was. So, today, I wanted to find out, because I learned that day that what our actions are very often misinterpreted. Very often misinterpreted. And I learned that sometimes we need to think before we do and say. And even if we don't think and it comes out and it seems or that it's received that it's not in the best light, or it's not loving, or if whatever the perception is that is not what we intended, then we need to try to rectify that and let whoever was caught off guard, offended, whatever the situation, let them know that that is not what we intended, and try to rectify the situation and find out what do we need to do to make it right, because that was not our intention. Intentions are so important, but sometimes they're misinterpreted. So I wanted to go to my spirit team and my guides and ask them what was their take on this, on having things that we do or say be misinterpreted in a way that was not what we intended. And I shuffled a little bit before we started. I got 2 decks out. I'm using the Literary Witches Oracle. That felt like one that would go with this subject. And I'm also using, because we're talking about perceptions, I'm also using the Deviant Moon Tarot. So we'll see what we come up with. And I thought I want to take out a card or two from the Deviant Moon first, and then we'll clarify with oracles. Okay, let's see what we find out. Clarify. One more. All right. This is what I got. I got the Page of Pentacles in the Deviant Moon. So maybe we've been focusing on matters of an earthly or physical form, and even trying to fix them and doing our best to keep up the maintenance. Then I got the Knight of Swords. Now, this knight he has his sword of truth there, and he's coming in a rash manner, and he's doing and saying things in a way that might need someone to come behind him, or for him to come behind himself and repair what's happened. Because he's taken the path of the fool. He's jumped off without thinking. What we can do about it is, I got the creature's paw, which means forgiveness. Forgive someone that does that to us, that acts in a rash manner, and maybe it hurts in a way that wasn't intended. We can forgive them because of our friendship with them. We can forgive ourselves for acting in a way that perhaps wasn't well thought out. We need to look for the guidance and trust. Follow that lantern. Finally, I got Mary Shelley. She represents loss, but she also represents the cycle of life. So we all, every one of us, goes through this, where we might say or do something that is misinterpreted and taken in a way that we had not intended. What we need to do is forgive. Forgive each other, forgive ourselves for being rash and running in where we should have taken time to repair. Don't be this guy. But if you are, remember that we are all capable of and have done some rash things that should have been thought out a little better, or in the heat of the moment were done without intending to hurt someone or offend or shock. So remember to be gentle with ourselves, because we have to live with ourselves, and we want to live with others. So just remember, beloved beings, that we are all human and we all make mistakes. And maybe, just maybe, that thing that got said that offended us or was done that hurt our feelings, maybe, just maybe, it wasn't intended to. Go to that person, tell them how you feel, and let them tell you what their true intention was. That way, we don't end up with unwanted resentments. So until next time, beautiful beings.